because it's the end of time, obviously, but we serve him because he first loved us. But at the same time, it is the end of time, and we want the glory of the latter house to be greater than the glory of the former house, have the latter and the former rain in the same month. And we would like to see a great end-time harvest. It is quite possible there could be a great falling away and a great harvest simultaneously. One of the biggest concerns I've got is that there's a great falling away and nobody knows it. People just keep coming to church and doing what they've always done, but there's a great falling away, doctrinally, spiritually, on and so forth. So in Revelation chapter 6, beginning at verse number 7, why don't we stand in honor to the Word of God. What is the fourth horseman of the apocalypse? This is the pale horse rider, the pale horse rider we're going to look at tonight, or today, excuse me. We're going to look at the pale horse rider. I'm going to read something here. It's very famous in American lore. And it's about the four horsemen. Outlined against a blue-gray October sky, the four horsemen rode again. In dramatic lore, they're known as famine, pestilence, destruction, and death. These are only aliases. Their real names are Struden, Dreher, Miller, Crowley, and Leyden. None of them weighed over 162 pounds, and none of them were over 6 feet tall. They were the backfield, considered to be by many the greatest backfield ever assembled by Notre Dame. Well, I'm going to tell you, those four guys don't compare to the real four horsemen of the apocalypse in the book of Revelation. And that was just a fit of dramatic imagery by Grantland Rice, who was a great writer. So Revelation chapter 6, verse number 7 will begin. Those four horsemen only lost to one team in their whole 4 years of existence, Nebraska twice. And so when he had opened the fourth beast, and we're going to look at who the he is, God willing, in just a little bit, I heard the voice of the fourth beast say, "Come and see." We're going to see who the fourth beast was as well. And I looked, and behold, a pale horse. If you don't mind, let's everybody say a pale horse. Pale horse. That's not Clint Eastwood. Pale horse. And his name that sat on him was Death, and hell followed with him. Now what that indicates is death and hell followed with him, is that everybody that dies because of the plagues of this fourth horseman goes to hell, that they're not saved. Every single person who dies here. And power was given unto them over the fourth part of the earth, them, death and hell, to kill with sword and with hunger and with death and with the beast of the earth. Kill with sword and with hunger and with death, with the beast of the earth. And you can be seated in the name of the Lord. So that sounds fairly dramatic. Now the fourth part of the earth, that could either mean that they had control of a fourth part of the landmass of the earth, or a fourth of the people in the earth. That's probably the more traditional interpretation. The population of planet Earth currently is right at about 8 million people. So we're looking at the time. We don't know how long the fourth horseman rides, but we're looking at the death of about 2 billion people. Now, this would have seemed extremely dramatic even in 2019. 2019, the world lived in relative peace. You had North Korea that would occasionally cause some saber rattling. They're a very small country, but they do possess a few nuclear weapons. Iran would cause a little bit of issues. Every so often, China might feint towards Taiwan, and on and so forth. But really, people did not think in terms of billions dying. And then COVID comes in March of 2020, before that in the country of China, and we are faced with a plague, a pandemic, something going on, and many people dying. And so it brought this into popular consciousness. And then we had a very dramatic thing happen in February of this this year, 2022, the Russian bear was loosed and invaded Ukraine. People have various theories and postulations of why that happened and who is to blame and all of that. But the fact of the matter is Russia invaded Ukraine, and the West and the United States, for the most part, not very happy about that. And so they are pushing back, and Russia makes red lines and says, well, if you do this, we'll do that. And one thing, Russia's economy is extraordinarily small as opposed to the United States of America. Actually, its military budget is very small compared to the United States of America. But the one thing it does possess left over from its days of the Soviet Union is nuclear weapons. And so they are not shy at saying that they will use nuclear weaponry on the West. And they have hypersonic nuclear weapons, which are possibly very difficult to attack by the U.S. military. I do know, I had a friend very high up in the military, and he always said this. He said, if you know about it, it's 20 years old. He said, we don't let anybody know in popular culture what we have until it's old technology. And when it's old technology, then we say it's okay. So I say hypersonic weapons, we may not have any defense against it. It could be we've got tremendous defenses against it. I have no clue, really, unless God supernaturally reveals it to us, like Elisha and the Syrian troop movements. None of us really have a way of knowing that. But Russia does threaten the West on a regular basis. They have done it multiple times this week with nuclear destruction. I don't think we can really comprehend what nuclear destruction is. It is many, many thousands of times the magnitude of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. And you would have nuclear winter, you would have radiation being in the ground for maybe centuries, if not millennia or longer. And it could very well destroy life on Earth. And so then you have China and Taiwan again. This is a regular basis, and China also possesses nuclear weaponry as well. And so there is just constant speaking of these nuclear weapons. But then also bioweapons. They're making, of course, bioweapons. This is just common knowledge. This is in news studies all over the place that are ethnicity specific, that these bioweapons could be diseases or plagues that would just strike particular parts of a population or an ethnicity or something along those lines. So we're living in what the Bible describes as perilous times. It's not only perilous spiritually with the rise of Antichrist, and it's not only perilous economically, but it's perilous physically as well. And so then we just in the last week or so had Nord Stream 1 and 2 blown up, and different recriminations of who were the perpetrators of this. But the basic line of this is that now Europe will have very limited power during the winter months. And it gets very cold in most of Europe, especially Central and Northern Europe during the winter. And this is going to be an issue and a problem. So you have kind of the pressure from above, pressure from below being put in, that energy is being cut. Russia's huge supplier of energy, as they like to say, you can't eat dollars and you can't eat rubles. You have to eat food. And it takes energy to produce food, at least on a large scale. I think everyone would agree with that. And so then you have the green movement where, and it is fascinating that the term pale horse in the Greek language is actually pale green in Greek. And so you have the green movement that is saying that we must eliminate nuclear power, we must eliminate natural gas, we must eliminate fossil fuels, we must eliminate coal, and this leaves us with wind and solar. which is another fascinating thing in of itself, because studies have shown there is not nearly enough wind or solar to anywhere close power the engine of the world. Nowhere close. Also, it takes oil and gas and coal to produce the machinery that gets the solar panels. Somebody had a humorous meme. They said, let me get this straight. They said in Canada, it was from Canada, they said, so we can't use coal in Canada, but we sell our coal to China, and then China uses the coal, you know, because it's supposed to protect the earth, but they're still selling it to China. China uses the coal to produce the solar panels that they in turn sell to Canada. And they're like, why don't we just skip a step and use coal? You know, and so, and I know it may have been difficult to follow that, but there's some truth to that. I will tell you, man without God, my old pastor used to put it just in his down home country Arkansas way, that sin will make you stupid. And that's just the fact. Man without God, regardless of the degrees behind his name, ends up in a horrifically incapacitated state, because we have access through the fear of the Lord to God, who's the beginning of wisdom and knowledge, or man with a sinful nature, with Satan. He's just going to make terrible decisions. C.S. Lewis, one of the smartest guys who's lived in the past century or so, wrote a great book detailing this called That Hideous Strength. And he wrote several great books. I recommend almost all. I don't recommend everything on the inside of them, probably 80–90%. But he was a very incisive, had an incisive view of the world, incisive thinker. And so he noticed that as he was a professor at Cambridge and different things, that it seemed like the more secular knowledge someone had, and so often the more they were obviously stunted in just basic common sense and you know, just true knowledge, because true knowledge comes from God. And so man without God, Romans 1 tells us what happens there. And then we just have all kinds of things. So it's not just heat. It's not just there's a country or two in Europe that is saying that if you use your heat or set your heat at a certain level this winter, because they see the coming energy crisis, that it can be 3 years in jail. This has been widely reported in the news. And it's widely reported in the news that in the future, the air conditioning will, you know, basically cease to exist. It always, again, is very interesting, the blindness of people, of their hypocrisy, that so many of these people making the decisions, they fly private jets to private confabs and eat, you know, the finest, and drive to their meetings in limousines and have 6 mansions around the world, and their carbon footprint is larger than some third world countries, and then they don't want you and I to drive a car, and they don't want us to you know, turn on air conditioning and these type things. And so it's just kind of the hypocrisy, I'm sure, is lost on them, and I'm sure they don't intentionally want to be hypocrites. They want to save the earth, and but they also, because of their sinful nature, want to feed their flesh. So they want to save the earth at somebody else's expense, not their expense. And they just don't realize. And so these things are happening. So let's say the European energy crisis is already shutting business down. There's many businesses, electricity, power has increased several times. I don't know about you, but could you imagine if your power bill increased 10 times? I couldn't. I'm not sure what Sister Waldron and I would do if our power bill increased 10 times. I'm not positive what we would do. But the third Horseman shows that could very easily happen. And so we could very well be seeing it happen, play out in real time. And with what's happening. So businesses are shutting down. There are certain industries that they're like, well, it's not cost effective for us to manufacture this anymore because the power, we can't sell it for what it's costing us to make it because of our power bills. And so this is only going to exacerbate in the very near future. So again, you have Russia cutting off different energy sources. You have the Nord Stream pipelines, terrorism, or whatever that was. And then you have the Green Movement saying that basically, and this is all documented. I've studied this for many years, read various very mainstream publications, and they would say, like the Rewilding of America and the 1491 Project, that they're trying to get America to go back to 1491, before Columbus came over here, and the Rewilding of America. And that basically it's kind of put out as common knowledge that carbon is bad, right? You hear how bad carbon emissions, you have to have carbon offsets. I wonder who can afford carbon offsets. All those rich people again, that's right. They can afford the carbon offset, so they can do whatever they want and just pay a few $100,000. Most of us, if not all of us, we can't do that. And so carbon is bad. Oh my goodness, what is it we breathe out? Oh, it's carbon dioxide. Oh, so the less people, the better for Mother Earth. That's actually not true. A little bit of extra carbon is actually very good. It makes plant life grow where there's currently no plant life, in deserts and these type things. Different computer modeling shows this, and on and so forth. But of course there is a demonic agenda afoot. Always remember this: we don't wrestle against flesh and blood. Those are just puppets that are put up to get our anger and angst up. Know how all of this is defeated is through the power of the name of Jesus. The weapons of our warfare are not carnal, but mighty through God to the pulling down of strongholds. And that these puppets that are set up are just meant to distract us and to give us focuses for our anger, instead of praying these demonic strongholds down in the name of Jesus. And so that's what politics is. Politics is basically the wrong focus. It's not focusing on the things of God. And so then we have like Hurricane Ian comes through. Of course, the worst hurricanes that have ever hit America were in 1935, 1962, and 1969. So it's kind of, as the head of NOAA said, that it's not, the intensity of hurricanes are not increasing. Now, that's again just a talking point. Okay, you create a problem, never let a problem go to waste. And so you create a problem, the media is the mouthpiece. This is the reason the Apostolic Church has always been right in trying to stay away from most of the media. I'm talking about way back into the 50s and the 40s and all of this, 30s, 20s, teens, Brother Montgomery, and all of this. If you ever read his book, The Story of My Life, and World War I and all this. And so, because the media is used, unfortunately, as the mouthpiece to promote these crises, and so Satan's the father of lies, and so puts lies. And so then, oh, we've got a solution to the crises, and it just so happens, and it's bad for you and benefits us. But really, there's no crises. And so, but what Hurricane Ian did, about 50% of the phosphorus, I think, in the United States of America, which is used for fertilizer, comes from Mosaic from Florida. And so they're saying that that's just totally devastated. So much of the fertilizer for the world comes from Russia. Russia is not wanting to export that because they feel like they're in some type of conflict with the West, and on and so forth. So farmers are sounding the alarm. There's just an interview with we're looking at the fourth horseman of the apocalypse. I'm just letting you know. With the largest farmer in Florida. And he said, what you guys don't understand is that there is famine coming to the United States of America. There's an entire food collapse coming, and then a supply chain with what little food there'll be, and you are not prepared for this. Now, of course, God can can stop all this. And some of you are highly skeptical, understand that, and you're like, well, I won't believe that. Well, you should believe the gas prices. You should believe your grocery store prices. And you should believe when, people are trying to tell you things and all of a sudden COVID hits. It's like, oh, do you believe now? You might as well just believe it because the Bible's always true. And so go ahead and believe it now instead of, if you have to learn everything by experience, Solomon, who's the wisest man who ever lived before Jesus, qualifies you as not a very good, smart person. We should learn from observation, learn from others. And so we are heading into perilous times, and of course the third horseman is basically famine. Some have tried to reinterpret that recently, but it is famine, that to eat, it will basically take a day's wages just to eat. And so all of this collapse, like on our dollar bill, there's certain groups that their motto is out of order, out of chaos. And they feel that they must do evil, that good may come, and that chaos will allow the phoenix to rise. It will allow for the rise of the Antichrist and that which is against God. And they will blame everything that is going wrong on the world with Christianity and the Bible, the belief in Jesus Christ. And and so the people that unfortunately are attuned and attenuated to the mainstream media will believe that, and they will be deceived by the miracles that occur. I was noticing just saw a news report about The View, which is obviously a program I certainly wouldn't recommend. I don't have a TV cabinet for many decades, and it's been a real blessing in my life. But there's this 12-foot doll walking around called a mall, and it represents refugees and all of this. And I thought, and I'm not saying a mall is this, but they gave power to the image of the beast, that the image of beast should live. And I'm like, well, they're already preparing people. They're already getting people started. In Great Britain recently at a sporting event, they had like a 70-foot bull come out, pulled by ladies, and it was clearly a reference to the ancient pagan god Baal and Baal worship, these type things. They're setting up Baal chariot triumphal arches around the world, even at where the Hadron Collider is there. Is CERN, Switzerland. And, you can go online and watch them doing satanic rituals there. And so what CERN, Switzerland is, where the Hadron Collider is, where they're trying to, it's like 60, 70 miles long, where they're trying to ram electrons and various minuscule particles together to see if they can replicate the Big Bang, which never happened. But they say that, it's possible they could replicate the Big Bang and it could destroy all life on Earth. And because we don't know what happens because we know splitting the atom causes nuclear bombs, splitting the atom. And so what would smashing the atoms like this, could it cause some type of chain reaction? So it seems like we're living or heading towards, maybe very closely, to the time of the fourth horseman of the apocalypse. So if you don't mind, let's everybody say fourth horseman. Fourth horseman. Far worse than Notre Dame's backfield. And that was just Grantland Rice writing. And so again, it does seem like these things are beginning to come to pass, and easily could come to pass, as a matter of fact. And as a matter of fact, I think if people at different, let's say, elitist confabs and things were sitting, maybe Atlantic Council, Aspen Institute, and on and so forth, listening to this, they would be agreeing with basically everything I'm saying, and they would acknowledge it would be a miracle if these things don't come to pass. Because the way the world is, when Satan gets involved with man's sinful nature, there is no limits to the depravity of what happens in mankind. Nietzsche saw this in the 1800s, and he said, what you're trying to do is you're trying to say there is no God, but live by Christian morality. He said it doesn't work that way. And so mankind's nature is nasty, brutish, and short. And so mankind's nature is to destroy. This is wars throughout. There's actually an encyclopedia of war. You can look at every war throughout history and archaeological reliefs of war. It's all very, very terrible. And communism, which is being promoted maybe under another name in so many of our institutions and even our political realm. Communism is an atheistic religion, and it allows you to do anything. Truth is what builds up communism. So when you look at the Soviet Union, there was a book written on the history of the Black Book of Communism, and it's written by communists, and it talks about the 70 million people minimum that communism killed. If you read a biography of Mao, I read a biography of Mao one time, and it's not just killing tens of millions of people, it's taking pleasure in killing them and torturing them. Watching them torture. Stalin is the same way. Lenin is the same way. Lenin said that our word will be audacity. Nobody will know what we're going to do because they didn't think we would be have the audacity, audacious enough to do these things. And so while we live, we wake up, the sun shines, the bird sings, we got to get up, we got to go to work, we got to take care of the children, we've got to do this, and we've got to go grocery shopping. And sometimes it's difficult to see the big picture of what's happening in the world today. And so this is all part of the fourth horseman of the apocalypse. I was just reading this morning in the news about there's a bat virus in Russia that they think could be the new coronavirus. You had monkeypox that came out of this, and you had Delta and Omicron and the original coronavirus, and I was preaching for a guy in Alaska, and he'd been in the hospital for ages with coronavirus, a very bad thing, didn't affect everybody the same. And so it's just things that are occurring in our world. The death of bees, there's the law of unintended consequences. The windmills we're setting up are killing hundreds of thousands of birds, including rare species. We didn't realize that. We didn't realize it would break up the wind fields on the other side of them, on and so forth. So again, mankind without God, true science was based on God. Isaac Newton wrote more about the Bible than he wrote about science, and he's considered to be the greatest scientist who ever lived. And so many of the scientists, they said, we're just thinking God's thoughts after him. And so we're looking at the fourth horseman of the apocalypse. Verse 7, and when he had opened the fourth seal, this is the Lamb. I heard the voice of the fourth beast say, come and see. So let's give it some context here. Let's go back to the previous chapter, chapter 5, beginning at verse number 1. Chapter 5, verse number 1. John says this, and I saw in the right hand of him that sat on the throne, remember it's God the Father incarnate on the throne, God and Lamb, a book written within and on the backside, sealed with 7 seals. And I saw a strong angel. There's different levels of angels. I saw a strong angel proclaiming with a loud voice, who is worthy to open the book and to loose the seals thereof. This would be like, we'd call them clasp almost, but they were clay seals. This was common throughout the ancient world till just quite recently, actually. And no man in heaven nor in earth, neither under the earth, was able to open the book, neither to look thereon. And I wept much, because no man was found worthy to open, to read the book, neither to look thereon. Some people would interpret that scroll, but we're finding out now that books did exist well past this in antiquity. And one of the elders, not the printing press, it would be written, but And one of the elders saith unto me, Weep not. Behold, the Lion of the tribe of Judah, the root of David. This is David's creator and also his offspring. Jesus is both God and man. The root of David, he's his creator, and then he's offspring, hath prevailed to open the book and to loose the 7 seals thereof. And I beheld, and lo, in the midst of the throne and in the 4 beasts, in the midst of the elders, stood a lamb. So the lamb's on the throne. That's Revelation 3:21. As it hath been slain, having 7 horns and 7 eyes. That's the summation of power. 7 eyes, which are the 7 spirits of God sent forth into all the earth. Now, God is a spirit. He's a singular spirit. He doesn't have 7 spirits. But it's like the same oil that goes in the candlestick and manifests itself in 7 branches. It's still the same oil. It's still the same spirit. Sent forth in all the earth. And he came and took the book out of the right hand of him that sat on the throne. Now notice the Lamb was in the midst of the throne. And when he had taken the book, the 4 beasts and 24 elders fell down before the Lamb, having every one of them harps and golden vials full of odors, which is the prayers of saints, which that's all fascinating in of itself. And they sung a new song. Music came from God, started with God, saying, Thou art worthy to take the book and to open the seals thereof, for thou wast slain, and hast redeemed us to God by thy blood out of every kindred and tongue and people and nation, and hast made us with our God kings and priests, and we shall reign on the earth. So that's us. We're kings and priests, and we'll reign with God on the earth. So this is who, when he had opened the 4th seal, it was the Lamb that was opening the seal. And every time the first 4 seals were opened, the first one, white horse rider, second one, red horse, third one, black horse, and then 4th one is this pale horse. So that is the context here. Now let's go to 4:7, Revelation chapter 4, verse 7. We'll get just a little bit more context, because it says, I heard the voice of the 4th beast say, Come and see. So who is the 4th beast? Verse 7 of chapter 4 tells us who the 4th beast is. The first beast was like a lion, the second beast like a calf, the third beast had a face as a man, and the 4th beast was like a flying eagle. So this is the eagle speaking. Verse number 7. Now some of you might be saying, well, Pastor Waldron, why do I care? Well, if it's in the Bible, it must be important. And if it's important to God, it should be important to us. Amen. And he's given us all things that pertain to life and godliness. And so verse 8, And I looked, and behold, a pale horse, and his name that sat on him was Death, and hell followed with him. So the name of the person sitting on the pale horse is Death. Now let's go to the book of Zechariah. Zechariah, the next to last book in the Old Testament. I think it's 38th book of the Bible. Zechariah chapter 6. And we're going to see that maybe there is some correlation with this horse and some of these horses in the book of Zechariah. So let's just take a look here. We'll just chill and have a little Bible study. Zechariah chapter 6, verse number 2. And in the first chariot were red horses. Now you remember that was the second horse in Revelation 6. First chariot were red horses. The second chariot, black horses. And that was the third horseman in Revelation 6. And the third chariot, white horses, that was the first. So at least the first 3, there's some similarity here. There's some similarity between the 4 horsemen in Revelation and these horses here. And in the 4th chariot, gristled and bay horses. And gristled is like spotted or straight. Horses with spots. And then bay would mean strong color. Some say it would be especially red, but strong color. Strong colored horse. And so then verses 6 and 7, the black horses which are therein go forth into the north country. and the white go forth after them. So this would be like famine and peace, if it's the same as in Revelation 6. And the grizzled go forth toward the south country. So in the south, South America, towards the equator, if the grizzled, in fact, do correlate with the pale horse. But I'm not totally sure that's a 100% correlation. The first three do seem to. The fourth one, I'm not positive. And the bay went forth, those that had strong colors and salt to go, that they might walk to and fro through the earth. Now, remember, it was an eagle here speaking, so to go throughout the earth. They wanted to go everywhere. It wanted to go everywhere. And he said, get you hence, walk to and fro through the earth, so that they walk to and fro through the earth. So there could be some correlation between these horses in Zechariah chapter 6 and here in Revelation. So the fourth horseman of the apocalypse, if it doesn't happen, it will be the grace and mercy of God, but it appears that he is very soon to begin writing. Very soon to begin writing. You have like the World Health Organization saying that there's hundreds of millions currently at risk of famine. And this is just a fact. This is just, they can extrapolate out the amount of food that's made. You know, in diesel, it takes things to transport things from one place to another. So like diesel in the United States of America, the price of diesel going up obviously is going to cause the price of transport to go up. It's going to cause the price of nitrogen, fertilizer going up. It's going to up the price of food, on and so forth. So even in seemingly best case scenarios, there's still some bad things coming. So I looked and behold a pale horse, and his name that sat on him was Death. And so if you don't mind, let's everybody say the word death. Death. In Greek, that is Thanatos. And I want to say there's some character in comic books or movies called Thanatos. I'm not sure of that. But I want to say there is. Well, just know that name in Greek is Death. Death. And so death comes riding. But not just death, but hell comes riding. So this means that everybody that dies, the 1/4 probably of the earth that passes away, this is going to be somewhere close to 2 billion people if it happens fairly soon, that these 2 billion people, all of them go to hell. None of them are saved. Now people might say, well, why would God do that? Well, why would God, with sinful man, why would he come as love and robe himself in flesh and die for us? I mean, why would he? Because he's love. So they're without excuse, the Bible says. And God has been dealing with them since they were children, that he exists and wants them to take further steps to be saved. Born again of water and spirit. You're either in Adam or in Christ. And so we don't believe the light doctrine that everybody who walks in the light that they've got is saved, because that would mean the worst thing you could do is tell somebody the gospel. Because we're supposed to go into all the world and teach all nations. And if they're saved with what they've got, and then you tell them the gospel and they reject it, then they're going to hell. The worst thing you do is tell them the gospel. So we don't believe in the light doctrine. We do believe you must be born again. And that is the straight and narrow way. So it doesn't mean people don't have a walk with God, a relationship with God before that. Of course they do in many instances, but God is dealing with everybody. But it doesn't, just because God deals with them doesn't mean they're saved. So death and hell is with him. And power was given unto them, death and hell, over the 4th part of the earth, to kill with the sword. And so we're living in this day that murder rates are way up all over in the United States of America especially, but murder rates are way up. People, many are offended. People are killing one another, and people are without natural affection. It seems to be happening more and more on a regular basis. But then, I mean, wars. You have like the Saudi Arabia-Yemen conflict that is a horrific conflict that doesn't get much media attention, but it's just a horrific scorched earth campaign. And you know, you have Israel and Gaza and the Palestinians every so often. And then, of course, this Russia-Ukraine war, killing tens of thousands. And then you have the largest nuclear reactor in in Europe, there in Ukraine, that is being shelled constantly because it's almost like they want to unleash the nuclear fallout somehow on the world. And so with the sword, a sword is just a battle instrument. And so we can see this kind of, again, being set up. There's what's known as flashpoints all around the world. And we even have elections in Brazil. They're concerned about violence in these elections. Bolsonaro and Lula in these particular elections. And they're just concerned that there's going to be violence. But these flashpoints, again, the Taiwan-China flashpoint and Russia-Ukraine flashpoint. Ezekiel chapter 38 and 39 seems to indicate at some point in the future that Russia and a consortium of nations going to rush to Israel. And if you look on a map, you can see that could easily happen at any time. That could easily happen. One of the most concerning scriptures to me in the Bible about that, it says, and God rained down fire on the isles that dwelt carelessly afar off. And so we were known as the Western Islands, so to speak. Australia's New Zealand, Tasmania, U.S., Canada. Even though we're not technically an island, it's a long story there, Panama Canal, but we were known as islands. But you just never know. And so I do know this. I do know, blessed is that nation whose God is the Lord. And righteousness will exalt any people, but sin is a reproach to any people. And so that if we continue to go against the Word of God, that judgment is sure. And it is said, like Sodom and Gomorrah, it was set forth as an example to all who would live ungodly. But now God knows how to deliver the godly out of the judgments of the wicked. The plagues did not come on the nation of Israel once it hit a certain point in the nation of Egypt. When God was pouring out judgment on Egypt, God protected His people. And so He got Lot and his family out of Sodom before judgment came. And so He got Noah and his family out. Notice this, God never changes His plan of salvation based on numbers. He built a humongous boat. The minimum capacity of Noah's Ark was 550 railroad cars. Minimum capacity. Every animal on earth, times 2, even though we know there were 7 of the clean beasts, would only take up, if they were lamb-sized, we could say that the larger animals, they were probably taking youth in there, would fit in 110 railroad cars. So it had this enormous capacity. It was probably much larger than that, with everything else being much larger before the flood. So it had this enormous capacity. Only 8 chose to get into the ark. God made a plan of salvation for whosoever will. Only 8 chose. Only 2 made it into the promised land from those that made the jailbreak out of Egypt. God didn't say, well, only 2 accepted, I better lower my plan of salvation. He never does that. He always says, this is the way it needs to be. The glory never came till the tabernacle was built perfectly. If things were not right, the glory didn't come. And so this is just the ways of God. And so, sword, if you don't mind, let's everybody say a sword. A sword, a battle instrument. And so we have weapons of warfare. Never before, really, in history, has there been a time to where the world's population could be basically destroyed within an hour. But we're living in that time. We're living in that time. Submarine-based launch missiles, Space Force, all kinds of things. Just it never. I mean, you think even in the 1800s, you know, the Civil War. I mean, you're still fighting for the most part till the end of that war with muskets. You're having to fire a shot and then, you know, north and south. When they came out with the Henry rifles that were 15-shot repeaters, the Southerners would say, well, they can load it on Sunday and shoot all week with that thing, because they didn't have to do the one shot. But you couldn't destroy the whole world. There was no capacity. All right. Knowledge shall increase. But you can destroy the whole world within an hour right now. Entire world. And it's only been the grace of God. Horrific things haven't happened. So a sword plays a part in this fourth horseman of the apocalypse. And so everybody who dies during this period is going to go to hell. They're not going to be saved. And so to kill with the sword and with hunger. And so people be starving to death. And we're seeing this again already. Most of the world lives in hunger before any of this happened. And now we're coming on a perfect storm. You know, I come from missionaries, obviously. And so like Africans, when they would come to the United States of America, my pastor was a missionary to Africa, that their idea of heaven was an American grocery store. Like to walk into a Publix. They had never seen that much food before. And Sister Waldron and I, you know, we've done missions trip to Kenya, and it's just true. You go to Kenya, and at best, the best of times, you've got rotting meat sitting out with flies all over it. And this is a delicatessen. This is if that's in the best case scenario. Worst case scenario, you don't have anything. Best case scenario, you have that. And so this is just how the world thinks. And so America, being a godly Christian country to a large extent, God prospered it because it followed the basis of the Bible. And there's blessings when you follow the Word of God. And so, but again, we may not realize how quickly those blessings can be gone. How quickly. How quickly. You could wake up tomorrow and the dollar could be worthless. You could go to pay for your... This happened in Germany. Germany, you know, is considered to be one of the most sophisticated, technologically advanced countries ever. And, you know, 100 years ago in Germany, you wake up and you go to buy a loaf of bread, and instead of a mark, a Deutschmark, they say it's 100 trillion Deutschmarks. Well, who's got 100 trillion Deutschmarks? Who has this? Well, obviously nobody. I mean, you would fill up wheelbarrows with money just to try to get a piece of food. Just like that. And so it could happen in the United States of America. You can wake up tomorrow and it'd be like that. And this is the reason we have to trust in God. We're going to talk a little bit, God willing, about giving in the main service. And it's mostly not going to be about money. It's going to be about other ways of giving as well as money. But when it comes to money, the reason most people struggle to give is because of fear. Fear is they're fearful of lack. They're fearful that they won't have as much to consume that they want to. They're fearful that others will have more than them. They're fearful that it'll be misspent. They're fearful. And so fear drives. And so perfect love casts out fear. Fear hath torment. But so, you know, our dollars could easily be worthless. Easily be worthless. And, you know, they talk about inflation is 10%. Well, all that means is what a dollar bought last year, it takes $1.10 to buy this year. It's been said the average family of four, it costs over $11,000 more to live than it did last year. Because of fuel. You see, it happens gradually. You fill up your tank, and instead of it taking $20, $25, it takes $50, $55. Well, that's $30 a pop. You know, you do that once a week. 30 times 52 is $1,560. So it's $30 extra a week over the course of a year. That's $1,560. You know, if you're used to buying a certain thing of food and it's $2.99 and all of a sudden it's $3.99, that's $1. That's a 33% increase. And so all kinds of things such as this. And unfortunately, they say, you know, it's just getting started. So we have the sword, and with hunger could hit the United States of America like that. It just could. And it's miraculous. You know, we just think we go to the store and get peanut butter. We don't realize how much it costs to get this peanut butter and what it takes from the farm to plate is a big deal. and the supply chains and all of this type thing. And so with hunger and with death, if you don't mind, let's everybody say with death. Death. And I'm coming to a quick close. The death, I mean, this means pestilences, plagues, earthquakes, tsunamis. I just saw the death toll for Ian was over 70 now. And then another few died in North Carolina and a few died in Cuba. But 70. Sister Waldron and I, about 170 hours ago, 169 hours ago, she was on North Captiva Island picking up pennies, nickels, dimes, and quarters and trash with her metal detector. 169 hours ago. That almost doesn't exist. Just like that. Just like that. And so death can happen. You don't realize how death, the bubonic plague, would kill half of people in Europe and a third of people in Europe. And many of you grew up during a time of polio and you're very frightened of polio. We just don't realize how quickly death, earthquakes could happen here. The Bible says there'll be an increase of earthquakes. And earthquakes could happen here. And so we just don't know. And then with the beast of the earth. Now some people say, obviously this means once you're disarmed, once all this, then beasts come out. And they're going to have a field day with people that are starving to death, people that are dying on the field of war. Beasts will just eat them. But then also it could be microscopic beasts, little viruses, little pestilences. Doesn't say what size the beast were. So the beast of the earth. But 2 billion will die. And so that's what the fourth horseman of the apocalypse is. So when 2 billion people die from these 4 means, and we see it happening. And all 2 billion people who die go to hell according to Scripture. My God. And God, by His great love, He wants us to be saved out of this. He doesn't want us to go through this. He wants us to make it. And He sent His Son, which means God came in flesh to get us out of that. But just know that this is happening. Pray every day. Let God speak through you. Speak with tongues. Pray with the Spirit. If you can, read the Word of truth. Come to church, because faith comes by hearing, hearing by the Word of God. Come to church every time you can, and you'll be able to see what's happening. Because if you don't, you will be deceived. You will be deceived. People are easily deceived. And here's the sad thing. This is study after study in sociology. That it is easier to deceive people than to admit you've been deceived. Yes, sir. Once you're deceived, then you'll fight to the death to try to say, because of our pride, that we haven't been deceived. Come on. And that's just a fact of human nature. And so we've got to humble ourselves under the mighty hand of God, submit to God, resist the devil, he shall flee. This could be the greatest times in human history. But know that very detrimental things, it seems like, are coming on planet Earth. And it's not the will of God per se, it's because of man's sin. All right. It's because God's will was Eden. It was perfection. It was beauty. It was blessings. It was love. It was fellowship. But Satan comes to steal, kill, and destroy. I don't want to get into God's will. It's in the Bible, on and on and so forth. All I'm saying is Satan comes to steal, kill, and destroy. And so it's people who sin and willfully sin and know they're doing wrong. God will judge. Sin always gets judged. Sometimes it's immediate, and in some ways it's all immediate. But then it's eventual, and then people live in eternity with the judgment of their sin as well. So that's the fourth horseman of the apocalypse. And if you don't mind, let's everybody say, I don't want to go there. I don't want to go there. Amen. Why don't we stand to our feet? Why don't we pray together and ask God for a tremendous ingathering before the fourth horseman of the apocalypse. God, I glorify you. I love you, Jesus. We see the world is set up. God, for these things to come to pass, God, it should disturb us. It should motivate us. You put it in the Word for a reason. It is there for our admonition, upon whom the ends of the world have come. God, in Jesus' mighty name, don't let us be Laodicean. Don't let us be asleep when